This is a Step Beyond the Fire podcast. My name is Cully. I'm a land manager and a wildlife biologist here in my home state of Florida. I invite you to join me on a journey as I seek to document the little-known stories told by those who use fire for the benefit of the land, also known as prescribed fire. So come on, let's head into the field and meet the people where the flame ends and new life begins. Welcome back to another episode of A Step Beyond the Fire. Again, this is your host, Cully. I'm here today with Ludie Bond. Ludie has been a wildfire mitigation specialist with the Florida Forest Service for over 20 years, and she currently covers one of the 15 designated districts that the Florida Forest Service has in Florida. Her areas of responsibility include Alachua, Gilchrist, Levy, Marion, and Putnam counties. Additionally, in her role as a public information officer, Ludie provides local, state, and national media with information about wildfires, wildfire causes, prevention, and fuel mitigation programs. And she also develops FireWise projects and community wildfire protection plans to lower the risk of wildfires and the effects of wildfires in vulnerable communities. Welcome to the show, Ludie.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
How's that for an introduction?
Yeah. Sounds like I've been busy. Well, I am.
I got that. I actually got that off of the University of Florida page because I know you're working in the lab there. At,
in the Fire Ecology Lab with Dr. Ray Crandall, right?
So that may be considered plagiarism. I don't know.
No, it's fine. That's my bio, so it's cool.
Yeah. Well, thanks for meeting us here today. I'll try to bring you guys to where we're at. We're at another city park called San Falasco. And this park is kind of a unique property. It's several hundred acres in the wildland urban interface. We got a lot of dense, overgrown mesic flatwoods, natural communities here. There's a beautiful creek that flows through this area. This is a lot of fire dependent systems, but this is a great example of what we have a lot of in Florida, which is long unburned upland pine systems that have dense fuel accumulation, a lot of duff, which we've talked about a little bit in past episodes. And I've worked with you on this project.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was a good idea for us to get together here, talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you got going on, and put this project that I'm working on and you and I are working together on in context. Because we've been out doing some outreach in the community here. So
yeah, I wish we had had the weather this past dormant season and into the spring to be able to get the fire on the ground out here like we had planned. But you know, the one constant about weather is that it's ever changing. And what we do know about fire is that its behavior is dependent upon weather. So you got to have just the right window to get this done. And we just really didn't have all the pieces falling into place this past year, but we did a lot of great prep work for it. So here's hoping in the next year or two that we'll be able to get out here and get fire on the ground. But and it's not just, you know, I tell people sometimes with prescribed fire, some of the easiest parts is actually putting fire on the ground. Some of the most arduous is the mop-up phase where we're cooling things down and getting it to a place where there's no visible smoke or no visible flame. But some of the most difficult part is communicating with your audiences that are going to be impacted by a burn. And this area here is right near some busy roadways and several neighborhoods and a state park. So it's going to get a lot of...
We basically got one wind direction we can work with here, and it has to be just perfect.
That's right.
Just perfect. And after quite a good rain event, we got to burn it in the dormant season, all that stuff. And you're right. Yeah, it's hard. It's tough to sit back and wait for the stars to align once you do all this work, which you've been so valuable, helping guide me in the right direction, you know, interacting with these folks adjacent to this area, which has been overall a very positive experience, I might add.
Yeah, I think some of the people that live around here are looking forward to getting some fire into this this area, because they really enjoy recreating in here, and they know the benefits of fire. But then there are going to be those folks who are either scared of fire or really concerned about the smoke impacts to their health. So that's where a lot of pre-work has to be done, and educating and kind of hand-holding with some of these audiences before and during the burn, and even after. Because it's, I tell people we need to do better as prescribed fire professionals in telling our story. And sometimes telling our story means telling what's going to happen before the burn, during the burn, and after the burn. And that takes time. It's not a one and done or the day of the burn kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that these types of outreach activities don't always go as well as this one in particular went. We had some very receptive homeowners. We had a nice conversation. I met them on site a number of times. We talked about why we have to reduce all this dense fuel accumulation around their houses, all of these things. And they were, by and large, there was not a huge amount of resistance. There were some concerns, but it doesn't always go that way, though, does it?
No, and I look at those situations where you have some audience members, whether they're local businesses or neighborhoods or just people driving in the area that might not understand the overall benefits of putting fire on the ground and using it as a land management tool. I don't really look at those as barriers. I look at those as opportunities, because those are always opportunities to be able to really, like I said, tell your story. And you might not ever get 100% understanding from your audiences, but you can strive for support.
Sure.
And if they trust the agencies doing the work, or they trust the individuals doing the work, then chances are they're going to be supportive of your efforts and what you're doing. They may not understand completely, and that's okay.
And it takes time. It takes time to build that trust, huh?
It's relationship building.
As a sidebar, I'm really sorry. There's a lot of mosquitoes. We'll go down here and we'll turn around in a little bit, and maybe we need to go back up on the hill over here.
They're not biting me. They're just flying around.
As long as we keep moving, we're good.
There you go.
So, but you're right, though. It's this huge aspect of, stringing fire through the woods is sort of the culmination of all of this backstory, all of this work, all of this engagement, building trust, building rapport, and building those relationships. Ultimately, the day of, when you are blowing smoke right towards all these folks, where they live, they understand what you're doing. They know that it's coming. They are on board with what you're doing and why you're doing it. And,
well, we know that Florida leads the nation in prescribed fire, right? Of all the states, really the majority of the prescribed burning is done in the Southeast, because it's our natural fire regime to have fire every 3 to 5 years. But Florida leads the nation with about 2.1 million acres burned a year. Some years we've actually been able to hit a 2.5 million mark. But we're also the lightning capital of our country. So it makes sense that we would have a high number of both human-caused and naturally occurring wildfires. But even though we're talking about the relationship building and gathering support and understanding for the use of prescribed fire, research shows that on average, 1,000 new people a day move into Florida. 1,000. Yeah. So you think about, our job is never ending. My job as a public information officer, and spreading information, disseminating information about not just the use of prescribed fire, but also wildfire. I'm going to be gainfully employed as long as I need to. Right. Anybody in fire in Florida, definitely we got our work cut out for us. And sure. I enjoy the challenge, because I'm very passionate about fire, whether it's prescribed fire or wildfire.
So rewinding a little bit, in your experiences, I always like to ask folks whether you can tell us a little bit about your journey into this type of work. You've been doing this for a little bit more than 20 years now.
Yeah. So my journey has an interesting little story to it. We're right at the 25-year mark, where in 1998, Florida saw
Oh yeah.
a huge number of wildfires throughout the state. We had over 10,000 wildland firefighters come to Florida from all across the country. And actually, the entire county of Flagler County had to be evacuated due to
Was it the whole
wildfires.
county that
The
was
whole county
evacuated
had to
during that?
evacuate, yeah.
Jeez, what a mess.
There were homes that were damaged and destroyed, but thankfully no lives were lost during all of that. But at that time, I was a mother with 3 young children. I worked in healthcare. My undergrad degree is public relations from the University of Florida and the College of Journalism and Communications. And so I did healthcare marketing and PR. And living here in Gainesville, of course, I was impacted by the smoke and everything going on with the wildfires here in the area. And I became friends with some folks with the, at the time, Division of Forestry. And they were saying how they never get any time or attention in the media because they're always deep in the woods doing their work. And I thought, you guys need public relations for forestry. So how do I go about doing that? So I went back to school. It's an opportunity. Went back to school, got a master's in forestry. At the time, University of Florida, our school is called the School of Forest. School of Forest Resources and Conservation. Mm-hmm. We're now the School of Forest Fisheries and Geomatic Sciences.
Yes.
Yeah. So went back. I had an emphasis on wildland-urban interface issues, which is where homes and other infrastructure blend, and they're up near natural areas where a lot of fires occur. And so I kind of blended the 2 degrees, and ever since I've been doing PR for forestry. Yeah, got the master's in 2004.
And you've also been a great spokesperson for this entire community of people who are trying to get this whole concept of good fire into the landscape. And you've been able to travel around the country and internationally too, right?
No, not yet.
Oh, you haven't done any international?
Haven't done Canada or Australia yet, but you never know. But I do travel all around the country on wildfire assignments.
Yeah, you do.
And prescribed fire assignments too.
Speaking of the whole Canada, it's kind of a relevant topic right now too, because of the massive wildfires that are taking place up there right now. It's just a nightmare.
And the smoke from those wildfires have impacted parts of our nation that typically are not impacted by by smoke from large wildfires. Our western states typically are.
Yeah.
But the Northeast and even down, I think in the Midwest, has been impacted from the Canadian wildfires. And so, again, it's another opportunity to be able to promote prescribed fire. And it's not that they don't use prescribed fire in Canada. I mean, they do use prescribed fire. They do have cultural burning from the indigenous peoples up in Canada. But these are some unprecedented wildfires that they're having. So it's just another opportunity for us to be able to talk to audience and say, see, that's why we use so much prescribed fire in the Southeast and throughout our country, trying to use it more in our country.
Sure.
So that we're going to have smoke impacts, but they're going to be minimal and more controlled and managed, as opposed to if it was a wildfire.
Definitely. Well, I'm getting ready to go up to Maine, as I was telling you earlier, catching a flight tonight up there. And I'm curious to see how bad or how good the air quality is up there right now, since this has been going on. I was in South Carolina maybe a little less than a month ago, and it was smoky there too. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. But super difficult scenario right now. My heart goes out to those folks and those Canadians. Some hardworking people up there. They've got some great crews, and I met some of those folks years ago out in Montana.
We're talking about the use of prescribed fire here in the Southeast. You know, we have the highest number of wildfires in the Southeast in the country. So we have the highest number of wildfires. We don't have the largest wildfires. Those belong to our western states. And that's because of a couple of things. It's because of the land management out there. That what I mean by that is the large, vast quantities of acreage from U.S. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Continuous fuels.
Continuous fuels, exactly. Here
Right.
in the Southeast, it's a little more broken up.
Sure.
But also, we use so much prescribed fire. So, I was referring to 25 years ago when we had those huge wildfires here in the state of Florida. We don't have those anymore. And the reason we don't is because since the year 2000, we now have laws and policies in place here in Florida where we are a right to burn state. Excuse me, I just swallowed a gnat or a mosquito. Yeah.
Let's go back. We've attracted a cloud of mosquitoes.
Worse.
The closer we get to the creek, we have let's go back up this way.
They're pretty rough.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So we have public policies in place now to where we are a right to burn state. If someone is going to have a lawsuit against a prescribed burner, they have to prove gross negligence instead of simple negligence. So we have some liability protection for people who are putting fire on the ground. We're also the first state that had prescribed burn councils, and we also started the prescribed burn associations here in the Southeast.
Which we heard a little bit about that recently with Ben Williams.
Yeah.
That was a great
PBAs are wonderful, and they're sprouting up all over the country in California, Oregon, Washington. They're all looking at Florida as quite the role model, not just for the practice of prescribed fire, but also all the other supporting things that go along with it, like public policy, liability, like insurance, liability insurance, things like that, that really help us do what we need to do to continue to use fire as a land management tool, the most effective and efficient land management tool.
So, bringing up that concept of gross negligence, I recall when I was having this meeting with these landowners here, and of course you're introducing the concept of, okay, we want to burn the woods next to your house. How are we going to do it? When, who, what, when, where, why, and how? And one of the homeowners asked me, they said, well, what happens if the fire gets out and it burns my house down? And there was kind of crickets in the room for a little bit. It's like, let me see how I answer this. And my response to that was that while Florida is a gross negligence state, I basically have to do something so far out of line and so
malicious intent,
all those things that only then could I potentially be held liable for this. But the law also requires that we maintain an adequate level of resources to be there to make sure that doesn't happen. And that was really the best way I could handle that question, is that while the law protects folks that are trying to do these land management activities, we also are going to ensure that there is an adequate level of resources there in the event that something like that actually did happen. Did I do the right thing?
No, you did. I mean, because it's also an opportunity to go in deep, if you have the opportunity to get into the weeds and talk about what goes into a prescription, what goes into a prescribed burn plan, all the contingencies, all the pre-planning, making sure that you have just the right weather, resources on hand, things like that. So a lot of people don't really realize the amount of work that goes into actually being able to put fire on the ground.
Yeah, and it's always a good opportunity for engagement, and I've seen it done a number of different ways. And boy, when you're standing up there and you got a big group of people around, and some of them are a little resistant, it can be a little tense. But I feel like it's always an opportunity for growth there, whether it be from an educational or sort of broadening my horizons, thinking about things from their perspective. There's always good things that come from those kinds of discussions.
One of the things I like to do, and we talked about it as part of our outreach plan for the prescribed burn we want to do here on the park, is during the burn, inviting residents and anybody who's stopping by to actually come over and see us lighting, see us putting fire on the ground, explain to them what's going on, why it's happening, what are the goals and objectives of the burn. I think it's a great education opportunity, an opportunity for them to ask questions and have input, have their concerns addressed. And then also here in Florida and throughout the Southeast, we do the fire festivals where we invite the public to come out and actually watch us put fire on the ground and kind of talk them through the process. You know, Zach Pruzak, one of your former guests on your podcast, is usually our narrator for the one we have here in Gainesville.
He is so funny.
Oh, he's a hoot. He is so much fun.
He is.
And we have that at Austin Cary Forest, which is a teaching forest with the University of Florida School of Forest Fisheries and Geomatic Sciences. So we do that on the odd years. And then on the even years, they have a similar kind of fire festival up at Red Hills, which is the Red Hills Fire Festival at Tall Timbers.
I want to go to that.
Oh, it's really nice.
And so that's going to be this year, correct?
January.
Or I'm sorry, be 2024.
Right.
So
they have it on
January.
The even years.
Is there anything out about it right now? Like,
I'd follow Tall Timbers Research Station.
Check out Tall Timbers.
Because they do a lot of promotion with it, and you can always Google up Red Hills Fire Fest.
Red Hills Fire Fest, folks. Make sure you Google that. Check it out.
And usually these fire festivals, when we hold them here in Gainesville, or they do that up in Tallahassee, it's during Prescribed Fire Awareness Week in January. So you can I think that's the last week in January.
That was the week I started this podcast. Prescribed Fire Awareness Week.
Perfect.
I quoted Wilton Simpson on him spreading the good word about prescribed burning. So, and it's been a fun experience. Let's talk a little bit about fire prevention. So I know there's a lot of literature out there about this and a lot of educational websites like whyprescribedfire.org. That's kind of the big one right now that I found to be helpful to help illustrate things. So what are some simple things, if anybody's listening right now, what are some simple things that we can do to protect our homes from wildfire?
Yeah, when we talk about wildfire prevention, of course, we're talking about preventing human-caused fires, because you're not going to prevent naturally caused fires.
Very true.
So for fire to exist, it's a pretty simple triangle. You have the fire triangle, we call it. You have to have oxygen, fuel, something for the fire to burn, and an ignition source. So if you pay attention to those three components and you pay attention to the weather, again, weather is the primary indicator of how fire will or won't behave. So if we've had a lot of rain, chances are you're not going to have high wildfire incidents going on. But if it's dry, if it's windy, we always look at days since rain. So the fine fuels in Florida dry out very quickly. Fine fuels being grasses, understory brush that can ignite very easily and carry fire through the woods. So you want to pay attention to the weather. Do we have erratic, gusty winds that day? Are you doing some sort of activity outdoors that might throw a spark and cause something to run? The number one cause of wildfires in Florida year-round, it's not lightning, because we don't have lightning year-round. It's escape yard debris burns. So when people are burning in their yard,
leaves, you're burning some stuff, and it's easy to, when you're doing that, trying to clean up some yard debris or whatever, you just walk back in the house for a while and kind of forget about it because you don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Or you think you've put your fire completely out, and you haven't, because with our fuels here in Florida, you don't just have surface fuels, which would be grass. You have ground fuels, duff, peat, and muck. So decaying vegetation that can go down 20, 30, 50 feet. So sometimes if you have a fire on the ground in your yard and you're going to let it burn itself out, or you think you've put it completely out and you haven't, what you really need to pay attention to is, has that heat started to burrow or channel underground and tunnel underground?
Right.
So you want to definitely drown, mix and stir with a shovel, feel it, see if you feel heat coming from it, drown it again, mix and stir. So that's how to put out your debris pile or your campfire. But things you can do to your home and property That's a little bit deeper dive into what you can do to protect your home and property if there were a wildfire to occur in your area. So typically we think about fire traveling by ground.
Right.
Well, it doesn't. On windy days, fire can travel through the air as well, and we call those firebrands. So sometimes bark that is ignited could come off a tree, a palm frond, leaves, etc., can travel through the air.
Those are the ones that get down in your collar while you're standing out
while
there.
you're doing your burn. Yeah. So you got to look at your property and look both on the ground and by air if you were to have embers come from the air and land on anything around your home and property. So those are things to consider. Landscaping is a big thing. So we talk about choosing low flammability plants. And what I mean by that is plants that have a higher moisture content,
right,
like succulents, for instance. Plants that have a lower wax and resin component. So one way to know if your vegetation is highly flammable is crush a leaf. And if the leaf has an odor, chances are it's got oils and resins. It's a pretty high percentage that it's going to have oils and resins, making it highly flammable. Many of our native species in Florida are highly flammable. Their job is to carry fire through the woods, and they do a great job. Palmetto, gallberry, for instance. So
lots of
choosing
waxy vegetation.
Yeah, sawgrass has another, highly waxy component to it. Burns very hot and black. So choosing the right vegetation and then where you place it, because you're always looking at how fire is going to travel through the ground and go from one area to another. So breaking up the placement of your vegetation.
You smell marijuana?
I do. Somebody's really enjoying nature. Good for them.
I think I smell a little bit of
it's really strong.
marijuana here in the woods somewhere. I don't see anybody though. Either that or there's a skunk around here somewhere.
No, that was weed. Excuse me. Yes, so landscaping, breaking up the continuity of vegetation in your landscape would be one way to slow down the spread of fire. And then the other thing is your building construction component. Having double pane windows, cleaning off your roof and gutter, keeping dry leaves and pine straw off the roof and out of the gutters.
Those are the little things that I think get overlooked quite a bit. Is nobody actually, if you got some pine needles up on your roof, it's real easy to just sort of, you don't even think about that. But those are, a lot of times that can be the thing that causes the entire house to burn up. It's just a little bit of carpet of pine needles up there, right? Yeah,
and if you have holes in your screen, on your porch screen, your patio, embers, you have to think, where can an ember enter into under or on top of my home? And those are the areas you need to focus and concentrate on. You can go to the Florida Forest Service's website, and we have some great tips for things you can do around your home and property to make them more resistant to the potential damaging impacts of wildfire.
It's all about eliminating the horizontal and vertical connectivity of the fuels, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some fairly simple steps that all of us can take if you live adjacent to a natural area, like we're standing right now looking at some homes. We've done some outreach with about an area that kind of like what we're looking at is some upland mixed hardwoods. So the fire risk isn't as high right in this particular spot, but further up to the north, there's some scrubby flatwoods and a lot of overgrown palmettos right up near those homes. And we've had those discussions with these folks, but your mitigation team that the Florida Forest Service has provides that help when you have those dense fuel accumulations next to communities, and they've been very valuable here.
Well, you bring up a really good point. Looking out here at the woods, the people who live near and around this park see a heavy growth of vegetation and think it's highly flammable, and it's really not, because they're not as well versed in fuel moisture, vegetation composition, how fire behaves, the understory that's here. Once you get a good dampening rain back here in the woods, it's going to take a while for it to dry out because you have such a thick canopy here with the trees that the sunlight can't really get straight to the ground to dry it out. Now on the fringes in some areas, we saw some palmetto, which again, as we mentioned, is highly flammable. But let's say they do ignite. Then where does fire travel past there? So, we're looking at that continuity of fuel load and what's going to carry fire from point A to point B. So that's another education component for people who live around here.
Do any communities that you've worked with in the past, do you have any stories about any, not without naming names, of course, any communities?
I think that gnat got me.
You still got it? Oh no.
I think some more water. Let me think. A community that was the question?
That may have been more of, may have taken some time to come around to the idea of this type of work. Have you had any major resistance with any?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting over a cough too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Major resistance. Let me think. No, I mean, I can think of an example. Well, no, that's not my example. That's water management's example. Okay. They have a area up in Duval County called Julington-Durbin Preserve. And when water management acquired that property, St. John's Water Management District, it hadn't had fire in it in who knows how long. So they needed to start introducing fire into that area. Well, it's right near a busy roadway, some condominiums, strip malls. So in building relationships with the people who live near that area, they started attending the homeowner association meetings, telling them what the plans were, what they were going to do, a basic time frame, why they were going to do it, giving the audience an opportunity for input and to have a voice in the situation, and then creating realistic expectations for them. And again, as I mentioned, you may not have 100% understanding, but you can strive for support. So over the years of putting fire in that community, and again, it took time, it took relationship building.
That's what I'm finding out here is that you get everything ready and then the opportunity doesn't present itself. So then we're into another year. Yeah. So you don't want to disappoint them, but letting them know you have to have just the right weather for this to occur and all the right resources, available to pull this off. So what they did with this community is over time demonstrated to them the overall benefits to the natural area, both to the flora and the fauna. Now, if they've gone a while without burning, the neighborhood actually contacts them and says, hey, we want to have a happy hour party and watch you guys burn. Because they do. They bring out the margarita. That's awesome. Yeah, the blenders, and have a big potluck party. And it's a social occasion for this community now when they do prescribed burns on this property. But it took a while. It really did. It took quite a while for that to happen. But now they have a great relationship with them. Another story I have, Department of Environmental Protection up down in Marion County, our mitigation team was helping them with a burn. And it was to benefit their scrub jay population in this area. So where it's located, you either put smoke on I-75, which is not desirable, or you put smoke into a neighborhood, which is also not desirable. But of the two, the neighborhood gets the smoke. And so talking with those people, and what I like to do on prescribed burns is be the PIO on the incident and drive around and talk to people, visit with them, communicate with them about what we're doing. They didn't necessarily like the smoke, and they were concerned that they may have to pack up and evacuate. But when I told them it was to benefit the scrub jays, they were all excited about it. They were very happy about it. That's awesome. So you have to find out from your audience what matters to them, what means a lot to them, and then hit on that. That's good. That's really good advice, because stories resonate. Stories always resonate, and if there's a greater purpose behind what you're doing, I think we can all get behind the concept of enduring a little bit of inconvenience for something that's going to be so much greater. And it's easier for you and me to talk about this because we're involved in this kind of work, but it sounds like you've been doing some awesome projects and been
Well, thank
involved in
you.
some really, really meaningful work. What is one lesson that work has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in
Well,
their
the one
life?
thing that I can think of, one of the things I love the most about my job is traveling to natural areas around our country. I think that's very important for people. Travel to our national parks, travel to our national forests, visit your local state parks, your local city parks, visit them and embrace everything there is to enjoy about that area. Fire's probably going to be a part of that. And again, fire is my passion, but what my job allows me to do is to visit some of the most beautiful areas of our nation, and I do that all because of fire.
And you get to collect some cool stickers
I do.
too. I see your
Alaska,
water bottle.
Colorado.
I'm
Yeah.
jealous. You got
Yeah.
Apalachicola. You got, what is that
And
other
that's a
one?
brewery. And that's a brewery. That's Fairbanks, Alaska. This is a muskox from Alaska. Got the water bottle in Colorado.
So,
So,
and there's that benefit too.
yeah, there's that.
Well, thank you for taking your time to meet with us today, shed a little bit of light on these cool projects. In closing, is there anything that our listeners can do to help support you and or the work that you do?
Yeah, I think I would suggest people really support fire in our country. Embrace fire instead of trying to suppress fire. We need to embrace both prescribed fire and wildfire, because not all wildfires are bad. They need to happen, especially those caused naturally.
Definitely. Good food for thought. Thanks again, and we appreciate you taking us in another step beyond the fire.
Thank you.